What about any negative stuff you hear about the wind industry? Should you believe it? You and I have an insatiable appetite for electricity. Come with me and we'll look at the issues relative to wind farms and the communities that they serve. This is the Windfarm Guy. Hi, this is Dennis Stout and thank you for joining me for this episode of the Windfarm Guy. You know, occasionally I hear misleading information about renewables in various states. Today, I want to address this in one of our northern tier of states, Minnesota. Certain groups put out videos that spread a false narrative about the cost and impact of wind energy. They try to convince folks that wind energy is expensive, can't be cheaply and reliably integrated, and doesn't help reduce carbon emissions. Well, these claims are simply not true. Wind is not only supplying good electricity for Minnesota and cheaply, it is also serving as an economic boost, supporting jobs and businesses around the state and in rural communities. And it is doing all of this while providing a clean source of energy. So, let's look at the specific negative claims individually. False claim number one, wind is causing Minnesota's electricity prices to increase. Although it is true that Minnesota's electricity prices over the last decade have increased relative to national averages, the average price of electricity in Minnesota today is on par with the national price. National electricity prices have remained relatively flat over the last 2 decades, thanks in part to investments in new natural gas-fired and renewable energy generating power plants. Minnesota Utilities' in-state growth in electricity demand has outpaced the national average. Therefore, Minnesota Utilities had to invest in a variety of grid upgrades over the last 20 years, including spending on new power plants, upgrades to existing plants to meet air quality regulations, transmission and distribution infrastructure, and also new renewable generation. It is important to note the cost of wind power has been trending downward, not up. Since 2009, the cost of wind energy has decreased more than 67%, and in strong wind resource states like Minnesota, it is the cheapest source of new electricity generation available today. False claim number two, Minnesota is not lowering its CO2 emissions. Well, that's simply not true either. Adding wind power has contributed to lower emissions. Minnesota's power CO2 emissions peaked in 2003. At that time, Minnesota power plants emitted 36.4 million metric tons of CO2. In the 15 years following, Minnesota's power sector emissions fell to 27 million tons. That's a 25% decline. And in that same 15-year time period, 85% of the state's wind power capacity was built. And new wind power continues to help lower emissions in the Viking state. In 2016 alone, wind turbines generated over 15% of the state's electricity, which helped to avoid 5.5 million metric tons of CO2 emissions. False claim number three. Wind is unreliable. It requires expensive backup power. Baloney. Fact of the matter is Minnesota wants a diversified power supply that leverages the strengths of different technologies to reliably deliver consumers the electricity that they need. They have found that they can reliably and efficiently handle a large amount of wind energy on their systems, and grid operators concur. Wind patterns change slowly over time, which allows grid operators to anticipate different levels of wind power generation and adjust the system efficiently to accommodate those changes. 20 years ago, the thought of hitting 25% wind penetration was outlandish. Now we have the ability to reliably manage greater than 50%. Today, multiple states already generate more than 30% of their electricity from wind turbines, and they do it seamlessly. False claim number four, nobody in Minnesota is looking out for consumers. Wrong. There's an entire body set up to protect electricity customers, the Public Utility Commission. The PUC's mission is to create and maintain a regulatory environment that ensures safe, adequate, and efficient utility services at fair, reasonable rates. In 2017, the Minnesota PUC approved a plan to add over 1,500 megawatts of new wind power in the upper Midwest. According to the operator, the projects will save customers billions on fuel costs while also delivering millions of dollars annually in land lease payments and tax revenues, not to mention the job creation. If you like what I've said today, be sure and click like and subscribe below. If you have thoughts or want me to address a particular topic relative to wind farms, please also leave me a comment. In reality, wind energy is the cheapest form of new energy in the upper Midwest. It is being reliably integrated into the region and across the U.S. And it's a significant contributor to carbon emission avoidance. In short, wind is a good deal, even in the northern tier of states. This is Dennis Stout, and I'm the Windfarm Guy. Thank you for watching. Working together, we can make good energy decisions and save our planet. I am the Windfarm Guy.